Hockey fans, welcome to NYI FYI with Sean Croft and Chris Hessel.
Welcome to NYI FYI. Sean Croft and Chris Hessel live here on YouTube, also live at FYI.com. Sunday, 27th, and we're talking New York Islanders. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Yes, as you said, Sunday, July 27th, and we're talking hockey, but hey, at least we have some good things to talk about in the off-season.
When was the last time?
My gosh.
We always used to do a show on July 1st to talk about free agency. And it was really just meant to talk about all of the other teams that were signing free agents, while the Islanders would sign the Peter Regans, Pierre-Marc Bouchards,
hey, don't forget Marty Reasoner.
And the Marty Reasoners of the world.
But we love doing those because we were able to get, that the purpose of that was to cover the league, basically. We would have beat writers come from all over. I loved doing those shows. That was fun. Those are my favorite. Put so much time and effort into creating those intros and stuff. And then we had some interesting things on the air. A couple of times we had when they signed Blaine Rolison, and that was kind of cool.
Yep.
We had man, I think the only other guy we signed on air was Marty Reasoner.
Yep.
When we were on the air as far as the Islanders signings go. But yeah, those were interesting.
And this was like the pre-Twitter days, and it was like you would sit there and just refresh like Newsday,
or your TSN or something.
TSN,
right? No,
or you hate to say it, but you'd even be on Hockey Buzz and hope like maybe something came through.
I remember we had to do the Hockey Buzz
go to that
thing.
Idiot and watch that idiot make predictions.
We had to do the Hockey Buzz thing once just to find something to talk about. It was like we were doing one of the 4-hour ones, and it got to like 2.5 hours. Our other guys canceled on us. I think it was supposed to be Strickland.
It was Andy Strickland because the Blues had made a signing and he couldn't come on.
Right. So
he picked up the phone. He's like, "Sean, we made a signing. Gotta go. Bye." I'm like, "Who is it?" And he clicked. It's gone. And I was like, "Oh, I thought we were gonna break something."
And I remember that we had to find something to talk about, and they talked about you had Eklund talking about Marian Hossa and the Islanders, and it was like, let's talk about this though, just for the sake of talking about it. It's probably not going to happen, but let's talk about it anyway. And then within a few minutes, he signed with the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, that was fun.
This guy's a moron, but let's talk about it anyway.
Yeah. So we hadn't done that, and it's kind of I guess that they kind of didn't do much again on the first day this year. So if we had done a live show, we probably would have been overall disappointed. Not in Chad Johnson, but in maybe a TJ Brennan or something.
Let me tell you something.
We'll get to those guys.
That would have just been. It would have been
a typical
July 1st show, and it would have been more group therapy. It would have just been a whole bunch of group therapy and people crying and us trying to justify, and myself looking foolish. The Islanders were going to make a couple of big signings, and I would have been eating crow on the air and going, damn it, they really just are the Islanders at the end of the day.
Yeah,
this is just how they are. Thank God for July 2nd.
I was going to say, I guess the day to do it would have been on July 2nd, although we would have had to do a show during rush hour to get anybody to hear our immediate thoughts on it. But yeah, thank God for July 2nd this year. And it's funny because when I was sitting there on my couch watching some of the coverage that I guess Sportsnet was doing now, since they have the agreement to carry a lot of the, TSN no longer has the exclusivity of carrying the NHL, so the NHL network feed was through Sportsnet, which, to be honest with you, made me miss the TSN guys quite a bit, in my opinion. It was kind of interesting to think about that. I was like, God, I said, at this time, you look at your watch and it's 2 o'clock, and you go, at this time we would have been hitting, hour number 2, our coverage of doing it, and we would have had, this guy on and this guy on and this guy on. We would have had, 17, 18 comments coming in about, all at once about, when are the Islanders going to do something? Why are we here? What are we doing? Blah, blah, blah. But
one of my favorite moments that we had doing those shows, and I loved having Chris Botta on, and I loved having all of the guys from all over the country, but one of my favorites was when we had Ted Wyman on it from Winnipeg.
That was a good one.
And he was talking about you almost got chills, and they were talking about like how they were gearing up for a big season, and it was the first year back, and they were going to try to do all this, this, and free agency, and it was like, wow, this is cool, because at the time we didn't know what the fate of the Islanders was.
No.
And we had hoped, like, boy, we hope that we're not listening to some talk show host in Seattle or Quebec.
Yeah,
in which case we'd have to talk, in which case we'd have to have someone translate it to English from French, and talking about what a great signing the Pilots were going to make, or what a great signing the Nordique were going to make.
Yeah,
the captain, John Tavares, powder blue jersey.
Yeah, I was thinking one of my favorites was when we had Kevin Allen on.
Great.
Kevin Allen talked to us a little bit off the air after we had finished with him, and he was great, and I still remember his comments. He was very flattering to us about it. It's funny. He was like, I was, in a way, it's that we knew as much as we did about what's going on in the league. I think he thought we were just wanted him to talk about Islander stuff, but we talked to him because we knew he was a national guy. We kind of talked to him about some other things, and that was a cool interview. And we did have Strickland on one year, and he was good. We had Eric Erlandson on, and he was good. And let me tell you,
and Mike, I think we had Mike Russo from Minnesota.
We did have Russo once.
Yep.
And
Bada, we had Bada on a few times.
Bada on a few times. And when I look at this now, and I see these guys doing their Twitter things, because Tampa was busy this year, man. I do, and I definitely get an appreciation for these guys. Now we're following them up, and they took the time from July 1st, and I'll tell you, it's not easy, especially with the way Twitter's become and using information coming through. So for these guys to take their 15 minutes to come on with us was pretty cool. So of course I had signing some of their guys that nobody thought signing as far as July 1st goes. Everybody went, sitting down. It would have just been the same thing, and I had flashbacks to we were all excited over that one. And, so much for that. But, July 2nd was the day this
July 2nd, the Islanders went out and grabbed a guy that I wanted them to go out and get last season.
Oh, yes, you did. I still remember this.
Miguel Grabovski.
Yeah, you were
finally.
You were a big proponent of him. I was really on the fence with him last year. Still on the fence with the first thing I thought of was, Sean's got his man now.
Yep. Miguel Grabovski. Maybe a year finally a New York Islander. What I like about this is he's a guy with size. He throws his body around. He plays for it. You obviously heard his comments when it was a little unfair for him.
People did, yeah.
And a lot of people didn't want him to go, and he said, this is where I was going to, he kind of pretty much just said, they made a big mistake. This is where I wanted to play, and they showed me commitment, I showed them commitment, and then this is what they did, and this is how they thanked me, and I can't say that I blame them. You sign a 5-year contract like that, and you settle in, I don't know what his personal situation is, but you assume he's probably got a wife and kids, they're getting the kids into school, they're settling into home, this is obviously up to that point.
Especially at the age of his career, he was 28 at the time.
Right, so he's hitting the prime of his career. It's debatably the biggest contract he was going to get, at least at the time, that's how it seemed, and that now you start building your dream home, and a year later you're told, get out. And I can't say that I blame him for being upset. I think the big problem there was a coaching issue, them breaking up him and Kulemin. It was probably the most productive line that they had. Both guys come out and score. You have 60-point seasons. You break them up.
And that was Carlisle.
Yeah, and it just didn't seem to make a lot of sense. Yeah. So when he got bought out of that situation and you knew they had a bad year, I said, I think this guy's still got something in the tank. And he goes to Washington last year. He put up respectable numbers, not great, but pretty good. But given the situation that Washington was in, and they were a train wreck.
And then he was injured, yeah.
Right, and he was hurt. I really kind of give him a pass, and now he's going to get the opportunity to play with Kulemin, the other big signing that we made. Again, another guy with size, scores 30 goals with Grabovski, and they get broken up, and
he's never come close.
Come close since. But you know what? You put him here on that line, I think you're going to have chemistry with them. You're going to give them a guy to play with, whether that be a Brock Nelson or Michael Grabner or an Anders Lee. Could you imagine Lee playing on that line? That's a big line.
I can see Strome playing on that
line. Or
Strome.
Already. And Ian Strome's put on some size too, but that's a big line.
It is a big line. And it's funny, the Grabovski thing, I was thrilled, because I was kind of a proponent. I'm actually a big Nikolai Kulemin fan. I think anybody who's listened to this show has heard me talk about Nikolai Kulemin several times, fully knowing the fact that he's not put up much more than the 25-point seasons, aside from that one outlier every year. It is fair to say that Nikolai Kulemin is not usually a 30-goal scorer, but I think it's unfair to deem him as a 20-point overpaid guy. The thing that I'm always quick to point out with Nikolai Kulemin is he is a guy who, while a lot of other people, Islander fans in particular, wanted a guy like Benoit Pouliot, I take Nikolai Kulemin over this guy. He's getting the same kind of money, $200,000 more a year, but you can call that, the Islander overpayment, if you will, just to get these guys to come as a package deal. But does he have as high of an offensive ceiling? It's probably similar when he plays with more skilled guys and is not put in as much of a defensive role. But, the guy hits, he gets to the net, he scores some of the dirty goals. He makes up for a lot of that dirty goal stuff that the Islanders are missing, I guess, if you want to say, since, Molson's gone. And in a second-line role, I think that the two of them are going to be just fine. Kulemin doesn't have to score 30 goals again for this to be successful. Mikhail Grabovski doesn't have to score 30 goals again for this to be successful. If you're walking in with the understanding that these are second-line players, the Islanders are going to use these two players in a fashion that really rounds out their top nine and gives them a really, really deep top nine. It's even you want to include. I mean, now you're bumping guys like Clutterbuck and stuff to potentially the fourth line and stuff. You really have four lines that you can really roll and can compete with any of the best in the NHL. It's going to be a process. They're going to see how Brock Nelson works on that first line, would be my guess, and then Strome's got that second line spot. But a lot of people talked about the prices that Kulemin and Grabovski got. Grabovski getting the $5 million, Kulemin getting the $4.2 per year. And Jeremy Roenick was very vocal about it, and Mikhail Grabovski had a great.
That was great.
He had a great reply, basically, where he went on his Instagram and posted a picture of him training with his trainer, so that he could maybe one day be as good as Jeremy Roenick, the 50-point second-line player who was getting $8 million a year before the lockout came. So it's Grabovski with the 35 points in the 58 games last year is a good indicator. You put that over a full season, it's around 50 points.
Which, look, he's going to play the second line.
He's going to play the second line. He's going to get around 50 points.
Right.
Which
you didn't
is great.
go. His numbers are what they should be for that line.
Correct. They should be, and you prorate that over from Washington. Alex Ovechkin wanted the guy back. The Capitals kind of did want him back, but I don't think they wanted to give him 4 years at the $5 million per. I think they wanted him to take a little bit less than the 5. I think they wanted him around 4 maybe. The Islanders more than willing to give that to a guy who's skilled and a guy who's got a chip on his shoulder and a guy who, when put in an offensive role, can really make things happen. And that's what the Islanders are relying on. They get to move Frans Nielsen back to a position that he himself is admittedly more comfortable with. And you know what Franz can do because you saw what he did last year, but he's always good for around 45 points a year, stuff like that. As a third line center, that's really deep up the middle. That's and Cizikas rounding out the four there. So being able to have Grabovski and Kulemin start the year on the second line, I think is going to be good. I don't think people are coming up with any unrealistic expectations. I mean, like you said, these guys are what they are. In a second line role, they can work well. They worked well in a second line role with Toronto, back when they were playing with Clark MacArthur. And I think when put in a situation where they're going to get more offensive zone starts, more offensive zone time, the thing that I think, like I said, I'm a big Kulemin guy, so I was more intrigued by that signing. But the thing that gets me with Mikhail Grabovski, Sean, is the face-off percentages.
Yep.
The face-off percentage is something I would have never guessed, but if you watch the film on him, he's quick, on the draws and how he's intense. The guy's not the biggest guy, but he's 5'11", a little over 200 pounds. He's not afraid to use that size. He likes to
right,
get
and that's
into the dirty
when
areas.
I talked about the size before. I wasn't talking about the height, but being over 200 pounds,
he uses
5'11".
that size to win some of those face-offs. So
and he does throw it around.
Yeah, so
he's not afraid. He's tough, and a lot of those European players are kind of knocked on for being soft. He's not soft.
No, I mean, this guy keeps
Kulamin's
getting
not
in.
soft.
Right, these guys would have gotten back to Russia by this point, but they're really
Right.
good support players. I think it's cool that the Islanders got these two in a package deal and brought other teams for them.
Well, that's the other thing I wanted to talk
Yeah.
about here was, don't forget, these guys were going to the Penguins together.
They were going
How,
to
I
the
don't
Penguins,
know,
or
but they were going to the
either
Penguins.
there or Winnipeg, it sounds like, and a third team. My guess was the Rangers, because I think the Rangers had interest in Grabowski because they were looking for a center. But definitely the Penguins and Winnipeg, you know, and to beat out the Penguins, because everybody talked about, I mean, Kulemin was penciled in to go to the Penguins ever since free agency had
Right.
opened. The two of them were buddies. They played on the same line in Russia, and Kulemin was really successful there. But it just goes to show you, you know, you put this guy in a position where he can do well, and he'll do well, and he'll put up his 135, 140 hits a year, and he'll put up, you know, some decent points, 40, 45, whatever it may be. It's going to be really good in a second line role for this team, considering that they're going to really be able to roll the top three lines, you know, obviously with more weight on the first one, but they're going to be able to roll the other two lines more evenly, put them out there more in the crunch time, really balance it out.
Yeah. We have a question here on Twitter, at George A. Pace. Who will Cappy Nino, quote-unquote, Nino, next? The answer is nobody, and
I
I'll
don't
tell
think
you
so.
why. And this is why. This is the other thing I wanted to bring up about this signing. These are legitimate, right now, NHL.
I know. Those perish the thought the Islanders signed legitimate NHL players.
Okay? And not legitimate NHL players at 38 years old. We've signed legitimate NHL players, sought after NHL players, not the Marty Rieseners that were surprised they got a phone call on day one. Now, Marty Riesener would have signed and he was an NHL player. And I think that Marty Riesener probably could have performed better on a team that wasn't this team, because this team was so bad that he had no support system. Now, obviously, with Casey Cizikas playing the way that he did and the way that he progressed, Marty Riesener was not going to get the ice time anymore because he was an old player on a young team, and a guy like Cizikas, we saw early on what Cizikas can do, and he's been great, in my opinion. I like what the kid brings to the table. Be that as it may, we did not go out and sign a guy that was surprised he got a phone call on day one.
Right.
And that's not me saying. He admitted this. We know. Marty Riesener said, I'm surprised I got a call on day one, as early as they did, because the Islanders signed him at like 1:30 in the afternoon,
Yes.
90 minutes after the market opened.
Yeah.
You probably could have signed him on July 15th, but that was our big signing at the time. So it just goes to show how far we've come, forget in the last 5 years, in the last 12 months, because the Islanders have not made this sort of signing in a long, long time. We have not gone out and gotten aggressive on free agents since we signed Mark Streit. And before that, it wasn't since, or it had been since we had signed Miroslav Shatan. So the Islanders, really, you have to be excited over what they've done, because what they've done is they have said, we are ready to win. We want to win now. They're not going to win a Stanley Cup, but they can at least be a
Yes.
playoff team. We went out, we got Halak. Perfect.
Halak
we
is
go
the-
out and we
is
get
one, yeah.
Okay, we go out and we get Chad Johnson. Great. This is the best goaltending tandem this team has had in years. This team has no excuse to go to the playoffs, and that's why Jack Capuano is not going to Nino anybody, because number one, there's nobody to Nino. Number two, if this team is a game under 500 come November 1st, Jack Capuano's gone.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make a difference. He's not going to have a chance to Nino anybody, because you're not going to have that young player to ruin, and if the Islanders are under 500 and they are underperforming come November 1st, he's gone.
The beauty of these signings, too, is that it puts guys in a position for competition, and it puts guys, you know, it doesn't put Michael Dal Cole in a potential
Correct.
top 9 role. You know, it puts him
He
back
does
in
not
juniors.
become a Nino. He
Right.
does not become a Josh
Right.
Bailey.
It puts him back in the juniors, really, because, you know, there's not a lot of spots right now. The Islanders have to get rid of forwards, which we'll get to in a minute, I'm sure. But I'm glad you brought that up about Halak, because we talked about it on the prior shows that we had, but a lot of people forget, you know, and I forget sometimes when you look at the Islanders' whole offseason and the guys that have come in, and it's Yaroslav Halak and Johnson and Kulemin and Grabowski and T.J. Brennan, who we'll get to in a minute, and, you know, Corey Conacher. You know, they've really done a good job as far as the depth goes.
Yes.
And, you know, it puts, you know, these are the types of guys that they're making so they don't have to put the Nino Niederreiters on the fourth line, because quite frankly they don't belong there. And as much as it was, part of it was Nino's fault, it was a lot of the Islanders' fault too,
Yes.
for the way that they did that. You know, and you know, not giving the kid his chance last year. I mean, you know, they wanted to get that full year really down in Bridgeport, and that pissed him off apparently. Hey, you know what? Those are the breaks. This is what happens, you know, and it happens to a lot of guys. You know, Brock Nelson got his chance, and what did he do when he got his chance? He played. He got scratched a few times by
when he shouldn't have been,
and it drove us nuts. But what happened? He came back on the ice. He did his thing. He started to score goals and a timely thing. He ended the year well. Ryan Strome did the same thing. Ended the year well.
Anders Lee,
and now these guys are being talked about in the case of Nelson and Strome in top positions, and that's really where they belong right now to start the year. I mean, Brock Nelson played really well with John Tavares and Kyle Oposo before Oposo went down, before Tavares went down, really too.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when I look at that, I'm intrigued by seeing that line to start the year. You know, that's the way that it should be. Even when Nino was coming up and everybody and the Islanders started camp with that and said, this is our line, by the end of week 1 of camp, that line was now broken up and Niederreiter was finding time with Marty Riesener. So, you know, they got to let that go for a little bit. They got to try that out. They got to start the season with that. They got to start the season with Kuhlman and Grabowski together on line 2. I know some people may think that it's better to split them up. I think you got to kind of work to everybody's strengths to start the year. I'm a big proponent of doing that, and that's why you keep Oposo and Tavares together with Nelson. That's why you try Grabowski and Kuhlman together on the second line and put somebody else there. I think a skilled player who maybe isn't as up to snuff defensively as a guy like Kuhlman or a guy like Grabowski, Ryan Strome would be perfect there. So really, you know, the beauty of it is we're talking about, you know, putting guys where they belong more so than calling up Michael Dal Cole and sticking him on the top line or sticking him in a second line role.
And we saw them do it with Bailey. We saw them do it with Nino. Every now and again, there come prospects who are going to play in the league out of the chute.
Oh, absolutely.
This year it's going to be Aaron Ekblad.
It may even be Reinhart.
And it might be Sanart. He's going to get his chance. He's going to get a shot. He's going to get a shot. You know, Victor Hedman, who had played professionally with men overseas, so he had a step above.
He didn't really get it till last year.
But it took him a long time. Duchesne. I'm not the biggest Matt Duchesne fan. At least I wasn't at the time. I like what the kid brings because he's a smart kid. He's got good vision on the ice. And you know what? He beat John Tavares for Rookie of the Year. Now, given he had more of a product to work with than John Tavares did. But Tavares put up a respectable year, as did Matt Duchesne, and Duchesne has gotten better.
Yep.
He's not as good as John Tavares, but he was never going to be. And I wonder, and I have wondered, in retrospect, and I have to imagine that the answer is yes, if the Tampa Bay Lightning knew then what they know now, would Matt Duchesne have gone too? And it would have been Steven Stamkos, Matt Duchesne. I have to imagine it probably would have, but that was the right draft decision at the time. They needed a defenseman. Victor Hedman, there's still time for him. Maybe he develops into the player that they thought he would be, taken at number 2. There were people that thought the Islanders were going to take him at number 1. Thank God we didn't.
Yeah.
But that worked out. My point is, there are some guys that are ready to play in the league right now.
Right.
Michael Dahl's not one of them.
No,
and we forced the issue with Josh Bailey.
Right.
We forced the issue with Nino Niederreiter. We ruined both of them.
I guess the only other concern now is on the defense. You know, is this going to happen to a guy like Griffin Reinhart? Is it going to happen to a guy like Ryan Pulock? You know, in my opinion, you know, what you see is what you get with the Islanders defense, and it's not great right now. It could use some improving. You know, they brought in T.J. Brennan, so you're giving the guy his shot. I'm fine with that in a number 6 or 7 role, whatever. And he's going to get his chances because it is a one-way contract. In my opinion, I think Griffin Reinhart's ready. That they're Ninoing this kid. You know, he's probably going to play, break him in, and it'll be the same thing like Travis Hamonic when he came up, and you know. But Griffin is. If you watch the kid play at the World Juniors, if you watch Ryan Pulock, it's probably a little too early. You know, Islanders could hurt themselves if they put Pulock in that position. He struggles, and all of a sudden he's the guy kind of being Nino'd. He's getting the Kartner minutes. He's getting 13 minutes a night all of a sudden, and this and that. And you know, So I guess if Capuano does it to anyone, there's a greater chance that it happens to someone on that defense rather than up front. But I really don't see it happening because I think Griffin Reinhart is ready to play in the NHL. I'm really excited to see what he brings, and he's really the wild card, I think, that's kind of sitting out there. You know, a lot of people want to see the Islanders add two veteran defensemen to start the year. That's probably unrealistic. It's probably unrealistic to expect one before the year starts. You know, this may drag on into camp or into the beginning of the year. But, you know, they end up bringing in a good, solid veteran here in the month to play on the blue line. You know, and you're going to have Reinhart. You know, that may end up being a real surprise to us, and we'll all be saying by December rolls around, we really didn't need to add that other defense, so now we can go get a good solid guy at the deadline.
Right.
We didn't have to get someone that's as good as, you know, a top 4 guy. Now we can get a depth guy to play with Reinhart. So I'm excited to see how he does, and I don't think that it'll be Ninoing him so much. But Pulak and Polka are the two guys that I would think could be Ninoed on the defense.
Polka, yes. I think he needs a little bit more time.
He's going to go back to Europe, I think.
Pulak, I can go either way with Pulak. I'm not that concerned with Griffin Reinhart because he did play in juniors after we drafted him. He did get time in Bridgeport last year, so 3 years later, he's 5th overall pick. You know, we have slowly progressed with him. He's going to get his 8 games. If he doesn't look good, he's going back to Bridgeport. Then you kind of have a problem on your hands. Because you got to figure who's gonna play in that spot. My guess is that if he performs well, he'll stick around.
Yeah,
and everything that we've seen, you said if you've seen the kid play, you know he's good. But you know, we didn't force him onto the ice and into the lineup when he was 18. We've let him mature a little bit, let him grow a little bit, put on a little muscle on his frame.
And this year he had a great year. He looked great at the World Juniors. He looked great in his junior. He played junior all year. I mean, he was playing junior until June because of the Memorial Cup run that he went on with the Oil Kings. So.
But he did get time with Bridgeport, didn't he?
Not last year.
He didn't.
No, he played because he went all the way, man. His team won.
Why did I think he had time? No,
I actually don't think he ever got any Bridgeport time.
No,
his team's been going deep.
No, but we saw him in a prospect.
Oh, we saw him in a
prospect. But he was playing on the Bridgeport side, wasn't he? That's all right. That's where I have this confused.
But either way, that's fine. But you know, Bridgeport stands to have a very young defense this year with Pelech and coming over, and if Reinhart gets time down there, and Mayfield's going to be down there, and you know, Graham and Burroughs. I think Burroughs may end up going back, or maybe Graham's going to go back, but one of them is going to. You know, so it's going to be, you know, and then there's still the other guys that you don't really know where they fit in. You know, Churchman, Brian Straight, where does he fit in? Karkner, where does Karkner even fit in right now on this team?
Karkner should be valeting cars in the parking lot. We're going to call him Parkner. That's what he should be doing, and Brian Straight shouldn't. I mean, I like. I'll tell you,
Matt Donovan,
Thomas Hickey. What's going on there?
Well, Hickey's going to be top 4.
Churchman, I'd like to see.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to.
We saw something out of him at the end of the year.
Out of him. You know, they signed a couple of guys for ECHL depth in Bridgeport. They signed a couple of defense into the contract. So they've got a lot of depth on defense, and it's.
And we went out. We signed TJ Brennan,
and it's given us
a one-way contract.
8 defensemen now, and people see the writing on the wall and say, is Matt Donovan going away? You know, was just going to waive Hickey or Straight? Would they really consider trading a guy like Thomas Hickey and trying to get value? I don't think that they would do that. Is Lubomir Vishnevsky really done, or is his concussion problem there?
Vishnevsky to me is probably
right now.
Probably a non-factor.
Right now, Vishnevsky looks like he's going to be on that second pairing with Hickey. You know,
I hope he comes back. We need a puck mover.
And yeah, I mean the Dan Boyle thing didn't work out.
But we tried.
You know?
That's the thing. It goes back to what we said. We tried to get legitimate players, and you know what? For the most part, it looks like we did. We didn't get Brad Richards. Boo-hoo. I am not upset that we didn't get Brad Richards. There were so many people pissed off because we didn't sign Brad Richards.
Yeah.
I was fine not getting Brad Richards. Please.
Well, I think it was day one.
Vanek almost came back.
Vanek did almost come back, and you know what?
And that was a little bit of a dagger. I
offered as much money and years as they did to these guys. I mean, they offered the 4 years at the 7.1, and he took the 3 years at the 6.5.
Still wants a cup, though. The Islanders, you knew he was never going to sign.
No, I mean, it was a valiant effort.
Hey, you tried.
You really had to have made that case. That would have taken you needing to sign a Niskanen or somebody like that.
Right.
Ehrhoff, you would have needed to sign like the top names at each thing. Like, okay, well, we got the top backup goaltender, we got the top defensive guy on the market. We signed these other two guys, the Kuhlman and or one, they probably wouldn't have signed either of them. They would have signed a Ginland, and they would have tried and gotten like a Brad Richards type of thing, but it didn't play out that way. In a way, maybe it's a good thing that it didn't play out that way. Years may have been a little wacky.
Right,
I wouldn't have minded
he's playing into his 40s.
Right. I wouldn't have minded it just because of where the Islanders are right now. It would have been the same thing with like a Curtis. Okay, we're trying here, but you did well to get guys that are in their prime. To get a good backup goal, to go along with the good starter that you really have now. You kind of gotta, I think the defense needs a little tweak. It does, definitely does. The Reinhart is a wild card though.
Yeah, the interesting player for me right now, as I think it is for a lot of people, is Michael Del Zotto. Why hasn't Michael? Is there dirt on the guy? Is he a party animal, taking it seriously?
And a lot of people say maybe he's priced himself out. Well, listen, the guy's got a contract here on July 27th. His agent would have said to him, "Hey, we can't be asking for this price anymore." They would have done that about 2 weeks ago. So I don't think that he's priced himself out so much as maybe earlier on he priced himself out,
right.
And now he's at the point where he's basically looking for a job. A lot of people. You know what I think it is? He's a defensive defenseman who had a really good first year, second year, fell off even more in his third year, and he's lefty. And I think that really all plays against him. That this guy in the prime of his career, now he's 20, whatever he is, 24, 25.
He's a kid.
He's fallen off every year. Okay.
And he just turned 24 in June.
Right.
So it's not like he's 24 and he's going to be 25 when the season starts. He's going to be 24 through the Stanley Cup next year.
Yeah. And he's going to get a job with a team that was looking for defense depth. Somebody's going to give him a shot.
We should be that team.
You really want him.
I think this guy would sign a one-year trial deal for about $800K.
I have absolutely no interest in signing him. Not after they sign T.J. Brennan.
Wouldn't be willing to give this guy a one-shot deal.
No, I'd rather be trading for Johnny Oduya or Boychuk or whomever else is out on the market rather than dipping into the well for anybody who's on the market.
And you think that defenseman is on the market for us right now?
I do.
All right, we're going to talk about that. Because all things have gone silent on the trade front. Maybe that's why I'm looking at Del Zotto. The kid can move the puck. He hasn't done it all that well in the last 2 years, but a lot of people think maybe too he couldn't live up to that Ranger hype.
There's not much out there on the free agent market.
For cheap, this kid is a low risk, high reward.
You really think so, huh?
I think he's low risk, high reward for any team. I think a 1 year, $800,000 contract, at most $900,000 contract, unless some team gets desperate and signs him for $1 million, $1.2 million, which I don't see happening.
I know.
You're telling me that you wouldn't take a flyer on a kid like this, and if it doesn't work out, he's gone at the end
not with
of the
way
year.
that the defense is constructed. I'd want somebody who's a little bit more competent.
Assuming you think that defenseman is out there for us.
I think that there is a trade to be made. Absolutely, a trade to be made. What I think is the case with Del Zotto is that it's scary. I think Nashville looked at the situation. I think it's scary that Nashville didn't keep him with Peter Laviolette coming in there, because he's got the up-tempo system. He's got the active defenseman system that you would want, that Michael Del Zotto would be really good with, because that was always the talk why the Rangers were looking to move him, because he didn't fit Tortorella's system and now he doesn't fit in with Vigneault's system. The defense-first system. So they send him to a place in Nashville which was a defense-first system. He finished out the year, they bring in Peter Laviolette, and then they make a decision to let him go. And I think that that's very telling, that they didn't, want to keep him on.
See, I'm thinking this too in regards to if you waived a straight, if you were...
okay.
This is assuming
they
somebody's
already
gone.
have 8 guys. If they end up moving 2 of these guys and then they bring him in as another depth guy for the $800K,
right? And that's kind of where I'm at.
Offensive lefty off the bench, yeah.
Because I don't think that this team, building the way they're building right now, can move forward with those.
I don't think so either.
With
but
a scrap pile defenseman. This guy to me is at 24 years old is not a scrap defenseman.
Yeah, I'm
not right now at least.
I just don't think right now. I think if you're signing him and you're waiving a straight or a Karkner, I think that it's just a lateral move. Karkner provides something, believe it or not, that he doesn't even provide, and that's some muscle. that's some fighting.
But that this team needs a puck mover. That's the other thing that's in my mind is we need a puck mover.
Yeah, I mean they could do well by getting a puck mover. And Brennan is really. It's going to be interesting to see how they use T.J. Brennan, because this is a guy who doesn't play defense, and a lot of people compare him to like a Marc-Andre Bergeron type. Like, hey, he could put up some decent points in the NHL if given a chance. He's probably not going to be a regular. He may not, but somebody had to give him a chance after the year that he had it down in the minors last year in Toronto in the AHL. So the Islanders will give him that chance to provide some of that offensive prowess. And I think that once they gave T.J. Brennan that kind of a role, it erased the book on for them, Del Zotto. Because Snow was interested. Snow was interested at the trade deadline in Del Zotto. He was interested in making a deal for him. And Staples said, a couple of weeks ago, because he was asked about it, he says, no shot of the Islanders signing this guy now. Any other move that they would probably make on the D would be a trade.
Which is funny because usually the Islanders would never give up anything to go out and get anybody. Now all you got to do is sign him, and they're saying no shot. They were willing to get rid of assets to get him, which doesn't happen.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You have to wonder if there's something on this guy.
Yeah.
But was he doing? Is he on PEDs and just didn't get caught? I mean, what? Something. And I'm not trying to slander the guy. I'm just saying, what is it? A 24-year-old who's barely into his prime that has shown that he can play at this level that nobody wants to touch him 27 days into free agency.
Maybe he's got a bit of Chris Campoli in him.
Could be. It could be. And that's why he's going to get a 1-year try-it deal from somebody on the cheap. That's where I'm saying it's a low-risk, high-reward. If he fizzles out, then no one cares because, all right, here you go.
I am surprised that some of these teams that needed depth did not do that. I mean, a lot of people were talking about Detroit needing a defenson. Maybe it has something to do with
you got to be over the age of 40 to sign in Detroit.
That Detroit already has 6 or 7 lefties. They wanted the righty. They wanted Dan Boyle. I was kind of surprised that like a team like Edmonton didn't go there, but they ended up going with Fane. So it is kind of an interesting situation, and a lot of people are a little surprised that Del Zotto's still sitting out there.
You have to wonder who that defenseman is that we can trade for.
Well, I mean,
and you and I have talked at length about how we feel like they're going to deal for a defenseman. We thought it could come at the draft. It didn't. I mean, I've heard that Winnipeg has interest in Michael Grabner. They have interest in moving
Byfuglien.
Look, I will jump all over the opportunity. Here's the thing, though, and I'll do it for Dustin Byfuglien, because this is you want to talk about a puck-moving defenseman. This is a defenseman that scores 20 goals a year. If you're going to move Michael Grabner, you better be getting a hell of a return, because let me tell you something about Michael Grabner. You get a lot of Islander fans that knock this guy because he'll have a season where he scores 40 goals, and then he has a season where, or not 40, he'll score 30 goals, 35 goals. My television just turned on in the other room. Somebody call Venkman. This is bizarre. He goes and he has these great years, and then he disappears and he has what he had last year. But for me last year, I saw a different Michael Grabner. And that's not to say that it was a bad Michael Grabner. We saw an all-around Michael Grabner. A defensive-minded Michael Grabner, a physical Michael Grabner. This guy kills a ton of penalties for the Islanders. So if you get rid of him, you've got to fill that void in on the PK. You also have to hope that you have somebody who's going to play minutes, because that's where he gets buried on the third line, even though he really shouldn't be, who's going to score 20 goals, 30 goals, fairly consistently. How do you fill that? How do you fill that void?
Yeah.
Where do you fill that need? So to get a Dustin Byfuglien, I'll do it. But if you're going to move him, you've got to be bringing something of substance back, because people look at Michael Grabner and they go, he skates fast and scores goals.
Yeah.
And if he's not skating fast and scoring goals, then what is he doing except taking a spot? Meanwhile,
right.
What does Josh Bailey do?
Well,
he does nothing.
I was just going to say, and everybody's expecting Josh Bailey, the guy who's going to be on all the trade rumors, but the Islanders aren't just going to dump Bailey. They're not going to dump him. I mean, it's just you got to face the reality of that. They've signed him long term, and they still believe in him in Cummins. Garth Snow's on the record of saying, it took Kyle Oposo 2 years older than the age Josh Bailey is now before he got it. Okay, so the Islanders are not going to give up on Josh Bailey just yet.
But Kyle Oposo always had promise. When Josh Bailey got drafted, we said who?
Hey, I'm just saying.
I'm with you, but
I think that the guy most likely to be traded of the guys that are regulars, if you will, would be Michael Grabner. That is my gut. I don't think Franz Nielsen's going anywhere. I don't think Bailey's going anywhere. I certainly don't think that the Islanders are going to end up trading a guy like a Strome or a Brock Nelson because they are not getting the type of player in
unless you're
going to
bring back a Bobby Ryan. You're not going to trade a high-end forward prospect.
No, not the way that it is now. So, you're probably looking at some of these other deals. Same thing with the James Wisniewski move that we made a few years ago. You're looking at, Cody Franzen. You're looking at Jeff Petrie. You're looking at, Boychuk, or you're looking at Johnny Oduya, guys that are on teams that may have some issues, or maybe have some extra guys, or maybe have just gotten tired of that player. In the case of Franzen or Petrie, to the point where that'll probably be the more realistic move that the Islanders can make. I know that everybody's been all over the place. Oh, the Islanders are going to try and get Dion Phaneuf and stuff like that, and that was really a pipe dream. I see a lot of, for some reason, talk about Brent Seabrook. I don't know why.
The Chicago Blackhawks are not going to move Brent Seabrook.
No, if they move anybody, it'll be Johnny Oduya. And people were doing the same thing about Patrick Sharp there for the Chicago Blackhawks. And a lot of times it's the names that come out of, so-and-so's in cap trouble. They may have to trade X or Y. It never comes out that way.
No, and it doesn't mean that they're going to get traded here, traded anywhere.
Right. So I, to me, when I look at that, that's kind of what I see. I know everybody was sitting there on the whole Kulikov train. Oh, Florida is so sick of Kulikov. Kulikov hasn't been good for them, and he just signed a 3-year extension. I mean,
right.
it's you.
And whatever
whatever rumors come out usually aren't always 100% true. But I do believe that Chicago is may be looking to trade. I do think that Boston may look to trade a guy like Boychuk, only because of these guys' situations. UFAs, they're not part of their young cores, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of people go, maybe Boston will pony up a Bartowski and stuff, or a Torrey Krug. They're not going to do that.
They're not going to trade you Torrey Krug.
They'll trade you the guy who's going to be an expiring guy, and a guy who, quite frankly, was a waiver pickup for them in Boychuk.
And to be honest with you,
they're not going to want to pay him $5 million a year next year, thanks to Brooks Orpik and his stupid deal.
Yeah, right.
So,
and my feeling is that you don't trade Michael Grabner, his cap-friendly contract, and his length for a guy who's expiring.
No, and I would agree with that. I would rather hold on to all that depth, have Corey Conacher be the 12th, he'd be the 13th or 14th guy at this point, have Jack Skilly and Harry Zolnichuk be the depth guys, rather than have these guys take up spots. Because a lot of people think that they've signed Conacher to play somewhere, which isn't necessarily the case.
And I liked that signing because I think Conacher brings something.
I think it's a good depth signing.
It's a good depth signing. He can skate. He's got good hands.
And he's better than Eric Bolton.
Yeah.
13th spot.
Yeah.
And Bolton's still here.
No, and Jack Skill.
Yeah, and he's a good guy, too, to have. He got some first line time with Columbus. So, they've gotten some good depth, but, I'd like to trade a forward to get a significant piece. I know a lot of people are talking about maybe trading for a Keith Yandel, and now that's where you're getting into interesting, because not only does he have this year, he's got next year left, and he's still in the prime of his career, and he can move the puck. Obviously, Phoenix has got incentive to move him. They really doesn't sound like they want to keep him long term, considering they already have, Gormley down there and Ekman Larson and whoever else that they seem to churn out of that system. That this is a guy that they've deemed expendable so that they can save money in other areas. So there are options that are out there, I think, for this team to explore. I think that they have explored them. I just don't think that they've jumped at it yet. And it may take into the beginning of the season, but I do think that they've looked for a defenseman. I do think that if they get a defenseman, it'll come through trade rather than picking up somebody off the scrap heap, which honestly is a breath of fresh air. I wouldn't put it past them to bring in a defenseman on a training camp invite. And maybe that guy will be Del Zotto. Who knows? Maybe that guy will be Murray. I don't know. Douglas Murray, if they decide that they want to go for more of a gritty guy. So that'll definitely be interesting to see. But I know I saw a question come through on the Twitter from someone.
It was George A. Pace. If the Isles don't get D help, how the heck is Reinhart a wild card? Which Isles D man takes his spot?
No, I'm saying he's a wild card based on you don't know what you're going to get out of him. I think a lot of people are really tempering expectations on a guy who may not need to have expectations tempered, was what I was getting at. He's a wild card in the sense you don't know what you're getting out of him. This guy may all of a sudden we may put him in and he'll be better than what Hamonic was at the beginning for us. And then we'll sit here and say, we really don't need to add another defenseman. Because right now, a lot of people saying you need to add 2. One to take a spot that's needed, because they did need another top 4, and another guy because you don't want to rely too heavily on a kid to play in a crucial role. But maybe Reinhard is ready to take on that crucial role. We just don't know that yet because we've never seen the kid play at the NHL level. But he may step in all of a sudden and be a world beater. We're sitting here going, wow. So we didn't need to add 2 defense. We only needed to add the 1. We're fine now. And that's just how this always goes, especially with young defensemen. That's what I meant by he's a wild card, but I appreciate the question.
Yeah, so we mentioned a handful of new names that have come to the ears, and we will tease this. We're not going to tell you who, but our next live show, which is probably, realistically, we're probably 2 or 3 weeks away from it, I'd say.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
One of those names that we just met is going to come on the show. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but one of those new names is coming on. We've already discussed it. It's just a matter of finding the day that works for us and works for him. But one of those names is coming on the show, which is actually the first time we've interviewed a ton of players in the locker room. This is the first time we've ever had a player, active player, come on the show.
Actually reach out to us type, almost. Pretty much reach out to us.
Kind of.
But
extended the inch. We extended back, invited him, said, I'll come on. Great.
Yeah. Good guy.
Was more of a, this is cool. Let me jump on Twitter and do a couple of things. And, so if you're, a private eye and you can go figure that out, then you'll figure out who's coming on before we make the official announcement. But if you don't feel like it, or if you can't, then just keep in mind within the next couple of weeks, we are going to have a current New York Islander, a new signer who is going to, or a new signee, I should say, that is going to join us on the show. The other thing that we wanted to talk about today, something kind of special here at the end of the show. As you guys know, those who have followed us for a very long time, as we start the 7th season of NYI FYI.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. As we start the 7th season of NYI FYI, you guys know that in the past we have we've done fundraisers for pediatric cancer at George Pace. Not Josh Bailey. No, it's not Josh Bailey.
No.
This is a new Islander. New Islander will be joining us. We have raised money for pediatric cancer, and we are happy to announce that we are finally getting involved with a fundraiser again this year. This year, Chris and I, we've been talking about doing this for a long time, getting back involved with fundraising and finding a charity, and after quite some time, we were able to come to a decision that we wanted to reach out to this group, and they have graciously accepted our offer to fundraise for them, and that is the Dream Team Project. And what the Dream Team Project does is they work directly with the Make-A-Wish Foundation to send seriously ill children and their families to Walt Disney World. And the person that started the project and has kind of been the driving force behind it is Lou Mongello. Some of you guys might know him. He has the WDW Radio podcast. He's been voted best travel podcast for like the last 7 years running. And the guy is very knowledgeable. He's written books about the parks. He's an extremely bright person. And a really nice guy. He and I have had some back and forth through email and things of that nature. And we're happy to say that his project is accepting our help. He's going to accept us as a group that's going to fundraise for him. So with that said, we are going to run the Cow Harbor race in Northport on Saturday, I believe it's September 20th. Saturday, September 20th, Cow Harbor race in Northport. We're going to run for the Dream Team Project, and what we're asking you guys to do is there'll be a donation page set up online. We'll link it through the NYIFYI homepage, nyifyi.com. And you guys can donate there. Or if you want to run with us and be a part of the NYIFYI running team, that would be phenomenal. And we'd say to everybody, if you want to run with us, and of course anybody is welcome. We've actually had some people that are interested, so I know we have a couple of people that are going to run with us. But we are asking people, if you can, find a way to raise $100, whether that's out of your pocket, out of your friends' pockets, parents' pockets, relatives' pockets. If you want to just pass around a hat at a bar during happy hour and say, hey, everybody throwing a buck, I'm running for charity, find a way to bring $100 to the table. Or if you think you can bring $100 to the table, and we'll figure out a way to get you a donation page, and we'll all kind of be on a page together, and people can directly donate to you. We'll figure that out. But, if we can bring in 10 or 15 people or even 20 people that can commit to finding $100 to raise somehow, that pays for almost a trip. That's going to send almost the whole family to Walt Disney World. So that's going to be on Saturday, September 20th in Northport. And we're going to put a flyer up on the NYIFYI homepage. And, as we get closer and closer and as more things kind of unwind here, we'll be sure to pass the messages along and let you guys know what the updates are. Hopefully we'll even have a couple of guests running with us. We'll see. We're working on a couple of things.
Yeah. Well, you're working on it. Yes,
we're working on it. And we actually did have one corporate sponsor, Sweaty Bands. They make headbands for athletes, and they donated a sweaty band for us to raffle off to somebody who runs with us. So if you run with us, you're gonna maybe win a sweaty band, and then we'll put gift bags together and things. Everybody will walk away with something. But so thank you to Sweaty Bands. That actually came in the mail this week. And just keep your eye on the Twitter account at NYIFYI. Keep your eye on the homepage, NYIFYI.com. Facebook at NYIFYI.
Right.
You guys will be hearing from us, and
something fun, something different,
yeah,
and something good for somebody else who's in need. So
yeah, and we're excited to do it.
Yes, absolutely. Especially us being from Northport, it's a cool event that goes on, and when you look at it, you go, oh, this is cool. You have the chance to kind of do something good for somebody. Turn an event that we have here into something good for somebody who does something phenomenal with their time. As Joe does. So. Oh,
God. Sorry, the television is just driving me crazy right now.
It's the ghosts.
Yeah, it's the Ghostbusters. That's what we need at this point. Actually, you know what that is? That's the NHL Network. That's the NHL Network. That's the day that changed the game.
Oh, the Gretzky trade.
No, this one isn't the Gretzky trade. It's the USA Hockey Soviet.
Oh, that one. Okay.
The 1980 game, the Olympic game. That's a great series. Day that changed the game.
Yeah.
Although it shouldn't be called the day that changed the game. It should be a day that changed the game.
Game-changing days. Because I've watched the Gretzky one, and that was kind of cool.
The Gretzky one was great.
That is a good. That
was really good. And then 30 for 30 did a Gretzky one was really good too.
They did an Islander one too.
King's Ransom, I think it was called. Yeah, the Islander one was fun. The Kevin Connolly one.
That was a good one.
Big Shot. Oh, that was
a very good one.
Oh boy. So yep, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you guys for joining us. And like we said, there will be a current New York Islander, a new signee that's going to join us in a couple of weeks. And of course, we want to say thank you to Lou Mongello and to his charity for all the work that they do and for letting us get involved. And we're really excited to help out the cause. For Chris Hessel, I'm Sean Croft. We're all Islanders, and we'll see you guys soon.